Welcome, 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 welcome. So presently, I have the pleasure as president and CEO of Newark Symphony Hall, New Jersey's largest Black arts institution, located on the southern end of Broad Street, really cornering in the creative arts and education district of Newark. But presently, I have the pleasure of welcoming you to a community of creatives. Don't you feel creative today? I feel creative today. But the creative community in Newark. Now, Newark is a city where freedom of speech is actually free, and where freedom of investment in that speech is invested not into talk, but into action every day, where we see art and artists across our city, where the present affordability meets opportunity and access, where corporations on each corner of our downtown invests in the creatives actively. So while you're here in the city of diversity, creativity, business fearlessness, and I say business fearlessness to be fearless and invest in the creatives of now, young people that are literally coming to this city to live because it's affordable, but because they are businesses, elected officials, stakeholders, community members investing in them every single day. There is a community of creatives. And I think what we're really having an opportunity is seeing Aspen, a global brand, also acknowledge that investment here and what the creative community looks like in urban towns and cities across this country. So I guess what I'm saying is I challenge you to be a little bit more open to the perspective of investing in fearless creatives. Be a little bit more open to understand when you have that opportunity as a corporate stakeholder, a CEO, an elected official, a brand DEI investor, what local community investment looks and feels like. You have to come to Newark. You have to look up at the development. You have to look across the street at the art that's here. So be a community investor. Be a fearless community investor and invest in the arts. Now, I have the privilege of introducing a fabulous woman that took that moment, a couple of 10, 12 years ago, and looked at the creative space and created a dope platform called What's Trending. And yesterday, we served on the panel today, and I'm going to tell you she's a rock star. So you have to be ready for the energy, because she will bring the energy. But she'll also be real. And I think if we can take anything from the moment right now as that being real, investing in who we are and the authenticness of who we are, being in Newark, is a great time and a great moment. Without further ado, Sharia Lazar. Thank you.
I'm super excited to be talking about disrupting creativity in the age of AI. As she mentioned, I'm Shira Lazar, founder and CEO of What's Trending. We're a digital media brand and publisher. We were covering the creator economy and social media trends before it was even a thing. So it's really amazing to see how much it's evolved. And I feel like I take pride in paying attention to things before mainstream is paying attention. I'm an early adopter, and I bring that into the work I do. So I talk about emerging tech and AI. I have a podcast series called The AI Download as well on the future of AI and culture. So definitely check it out. And it's actually on Audible. So check it out on Audible. Before I bring our guests out today and speakers, I want to set the tone for where the AI industry is currently at. You might know some of these numbers, but I invite you to listen. Maybe jot down some notes, because I'm hoping for a little recap on LinkedIn with some tags, everyone. So let's look at some global stats right now. The GDP contribution of AI. It's projected to add over 15 trillion to the global GDP by 2030, okay? With North America and China receiving the largest gains. This is why the work locally is also important. Because if we don't do the work locally, especially, places like Newark, people will get left behind. Communities will get left behind. So I want to really emphasize that we know that globally there's going to be an impact. We know the countries that are leading the way. But if we don't see the gaps, there will still be a discrepancy of those involved in this movement and revolution. A lot of us talk about job loss, right? It's the freakiest thing. Headlines, your job will be lost. What's going to happen? All right. So from Forrester Research, they report that AI could result in job losses, of course. As many as an estimated 2.4 million positions in the US by 2030. 2.4 million, that's a lot, but maybe not as much as you expected. But ultimately, it's going to be reshaping existing jobs. 11 million workers are likely to see their roles change, but not disappear entirely. So some positivity there. And also research indicates AI's ability, as we know, to handle monotonous work. Guess what? And because we're talking about creativity, this helps prevent burnouts, which 76% of creative professionals confess to experiencing. Whoever's in the creative space right now, I feel like creativity impacts all work. Who experiences burnout? 50% of you. The rest of the 50%, I would love to know your tips of how you don't experience burnout. But AI will help with that. So I'm ending this State of the Union of AI on a positive note. I feel like you hear a lot about the fear-mongering, and we want to talk about the reality and the real talk. We also want to talk about the opportunities right now. And here to share more on that, let me introduce our speakers. I want you to give them a big round of applause, some energy. We've got Bob Kerrigan, CEO of Audible. Bob, welcome to the stage. And Sasha Stiles, who is a poet and artist. Sasha, welcome to the stage. There you go. I'll be sitting down there with you. Okay.
All right.
Hi, everyone. Hi, yes. I'm so excited for this conversation. We'll be opening it up for questions as well, if you have any questions. So when you hear these stats that I shared, from a global level, but also how it will impact the creative community, what do each of you think about that, Bob?
Well, I think about, yes, the transformative impact of this technology. In the case of Audible, for instance, I think specifically about the chance to bring more audiobooks to more people in their own languages around the world. So today, within the audiobook world, 75% of all the audiobooks are in English, and only about 3% of all of the books commercially available in the world are in audio. So think about that. So the opportunity to help publishers and authors create more audiobooks in the language that customers want them around the world is a tremendous growth opportunity and strategy. Due to cost and time to make, a lot of these publishers might be hesitant to create audiobooks across their entire catalog, and so consumers want it. And so the opportunity to, again, use technology to be able to make it available to customers is very exciting, and that's the way I think about it.
Yeah, and I'm excited to dive deeper into that. Sasha, what about you? When you hear those numbers, because I think as a creators are also pushing back, especially where I live in LA and Hollywood. There's a lot of tension, but you dove in. You lean into AI.
I did. Well, I mean, I think like you, in a sense, I tend to be an early adopter with a lot of technologies. I've always been really interested in emerging technologies. And so in 2017 or so, when I started to first kind of begin hearing about natural language processing AI, it really perked my ears up. You know, I'm a lifelong writer and artist, and you know, I've been writing poems and fiction and essays for as long as I can remember, both with and without technology. And my first love in the world is wrestling with language and playing with words. And I kind of came at it from that point of view more than anything else. It was really, you know, this question of how can this emerging technology make my joy, make my creativity, make my imagination as a writer and as an artist more open, more exciting, more exhilarating. And so I really, you know, kind of came at it from this more optimistic point of view, and I think I still hold that point of view for the most part, otherwise I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But I'm very, very interested in how technologies like artificial intelligence and also other technologies like blockchain and VR, and there's other sorts of technologies that I do a lot of work with as well, but I'm very interested in how they not only allow me to crack open my imagination and kind of take my art and my creativity to new places, but also how do they allow me to reflect more on what it means to be human in an era of non-human intelligences and networks and algorithms and machines. And moreover, how can it allow me to continue shaping and reshaping these genres of art and literature in ways that maybe more accurately reflect or more fully allow me to reflect on this state of the human condition today in ways that I couldn't and can't do in more conventional publishing, in more conventional forms of art and literature, because I've been doing those things my whole life, right?
Yeah.
And at a point, you just kind of realize, well, it's kind of a weird thing to be hanging on to these old-fashioned notions of what a poem should be or what a piece of literature should be when my entire existence is mediated by machines and these new digital technologies. Why don't I use them as a medium, because they really have a material impact on my life and also my livelihood as a creative person.
I know, it's almost like just ignoring it creates a bigger problem, right? And I feel like while artists are pushing back and the creative community in some ways while others are embracing it, as a CEO and a leader, you have no choice but to embrace it. And the fact is, you probably already have, because all of us and a lot of the mainstream folks are just discovering AI through ChatGPT and all that. Technology and companies have been using AI for over a decade. So how in the past was Audible using AI, and how has that evolved to where it is now?
Right, so Audible is very much a direct-to-consumer service.
Yeah.
So we reach consumers mostly through app experiences. And at that intersection of content and technology, there's always been a lot of innovation. We've been inventing the audiobook category since we started. But over the last few years, we have been testing and learning with a number of innovations in the audiobook space to kind of everything from how we find customers, because you might have seen our marketing and lots of our promotions everywhere. So how do we use those capabilities to target the right users and potential customers? And then how do we engage them and help them find their next listen? How do we get them interacting more with the titles that they're listening to? And of course, how do we expand the number of titles that are available? All of those things are applications of how we're using generative AI solutions today. And it really has picked up speed in the last few years. The one thing I can tell you, though, is we just don't, there's a lot of technology, and there always has been, but it's really about what makes sense for our customers. And that, so we are constantly, again, the benefit of being so direct to consumers that you can do lots of testing and learning. And by the way, we do the same thing with our creators. For instance, right now we've got a beta happening right now with narrators that are using some of our voice technology to create voice replicas in their own voice. And we're doing a beta, and we're working with them on that. There's always things you have to work through. But that'll be a tremendous opportunity for these creators to be able to make their voices available to books around the world. And that's just an example of how you can think about technology, but you really have to focus on how does it add value, how does it grow the business for customers, consumers, and for creators.
Yeah, so there's a search and discovery component, right, for consumers. I would love to dive a bit deeper into the creator side, because you have these narrators, but you also have the writers who are creatives.
Absolutely.
And how does your implementation of AI right now impact them, and how are you looking out for the red flags right now that a lot of creatives are bringing up?
Well, authors, for instance, particularly independent authors,
Yeah.
Maybe they couldn't afford an audiobook before. It's their choice. If they want to make audiobooks, they can use our capabilities. And it's the voice applied to their text, which is their book. So that is, we're essentially lowering the barrier to entry for them and opening up our service to many more titles. So it's great for consumers, but it's great for these authors who now have access to this audio audience that they didn't have before. And over time, we'll have increasing capabilities to be able to translate. Translation is very expensive for them, so be able to translate this, and you'll be able to, when you publish your title, make it available instantly in many, many languages around the world. And that is an incredible opportunity for authors.
And would it be my voice? If I was reading my book, it would also be in other languages?
It could be. Well, right.
Okay.
So that's one of the benefits of voice-to-voice translation.
Yeah.
That is one of the things. We have two things. We have text to voice, and then we've got voice-to-voice. One of the benefits of making your own voice model then is, then we can apply the translation to that. And so your voice, your tone, your expressivity, all that energy you just brought, you could make that available in languages around the world. And that's the magic of it. And that's something that many authors are super excited about.
Yeah, I would think so. And I feel like with those use cases, you wonder why are we pushing back so much? But on your end, I guess, where are you seeing the pushback make sense? And what are you fighting for as an artist right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, the first thing I would say is that I completely love everything that you're saying, and I was so excited about this panel to talk to you both and really to nerd out about the publishing and the book side of this in particular, because I think that's where I do see a lot of opportunities and just ways to play and really kind of innovate, and both in terms of language and the actual text in and of itself, but then also in terms of things like voice. And I've been doing a lot of experimentation with exactly these kinds of tools for a long time, and really seeing how it does sort of enable me to find different parts of my voice or to articulate different parts of my artistic personality. And I do really see that as an incredibly positive and exciting thing, to really sort of not feel limited, I guess, by conventions or by the traditional format. So I tend to really enjoy the experimentation and working hand in hand, not only in my studio or with other artists, but also with tech partners, with platforms, with commercial products. A lot of my work has been with Gemini and Google and with OpenAI and with other companies where I am getting to sort of use these tools and maybe push them in places where they're not really supposed to be used.
Wait, so are you getting beta access and then giving them feedback on it?
In some cases, yes. Yeah. I mean, that's lots of different ways that I think artists like to be able to enter these kinds of partnerships. But I really do think, and this goes to answer your question, I think a little bit, I really think the role of artists in this conversation is to use these tools to kind of, to explore, to experiment with these things that are already so implicit in every aspect of our daily lives, and to be able to sort of reflect on them, to use them, to pressure test them, to identify risks, to see where the people that are building them are maybe not seeing the challenges or not seeing the shortcomings or are not seeing the possibilities beyond the obvious use cases. And I think that's really, for me, been the kind of the motivating factor. I come from a more of a quote-unquote serious literary background, and like we were talking about before coming on stage, there is a ton of hostility in that community, and and I think in the artistic community at large. But really, when it comes to actually writing text, I think there's a lot of resistance to it, and so I find myself talking quite a lot about why I, as a writer and as a poet, am drawn to these tools, and I have sort of philosophical reasons for why I'm interested, and I also have sort of, I guess, pragmatic reasons for wanting to be involved in this conversation, because I see how it's being driven by technologists. I see how it's being driven with or without us. And I think at the end of the day, when I encounter hostility, it is, over concerns about how one's intellectual property is being utilized, right, without consent, or it's about the environmental impacts of these tools, which is a pretty thorny issue right now. For lots of reasons. And then, of course, there's many, many ethical challenges, and I think, for myself, I think it's very possible and actually probably very necessary to be able to hold two things in mind at the same time. One of which is that the core promise of AI, the core values of AI are deeply, deeply human, and they're about collaborating, and they're about collective knowledge, and they're about really putting heads together and trying to solve bigger problems than we can do on our own. And then on the other hand, there are these very flawed incarnations of artificial intelligence and these systems that are being built in ways that are maybe not living up to the promise or not fulfilling really what, the totality of this vision. And I think it's important to be wrestling with all of that at the same time,
Well, yeah, all right, there's so many things. Okay, so you're talking about the foundation of internet culture and digital culture is somewhat based on collaboration, remix culture of sorts, right? But then, of course, there's this idea of free use or fair use, fair use, and what is stealing, right? And training off you so that I could just do a version of Sasha's art. Yeah. What is your take on that? Like the whole Studio Ghibli controversy, where I don't know if you saw that, and I even, just because I cover internet culture, was reporting about it, and then so I tried my own. Of course, I got called out because they said, why are you basically giving a platform for this type of stuff? And so I took it down out of respect because this was true. It's a conversation. That's why you have the ability to post something and take it down, right? And so what do you think about that?
Yeah.
And are you worried about that? Because that is a real thing. If we don't fight back now, are we setting a foundation where we say, it's okay, we're normalizing it.
Yeah.
And these companies are making a ton of money and are worth how much money? Trillions, who knows at this point.
So this is where I think it's a really complicated thing. And I, like for myself, my personal view on this, and this is like a much longer conversation, so I'll try to do the short version of it. But I mean, my sort of philosophical approach to thinking through copyright and IP does kind of go back to all the work that I've done in academia and thinking about my career as a student and researching and citing my sources and all that, knowing how important that is, but at the same time recognizing that all creativity is accretive and all originality really comes from many of us like putting heads together and bouncing ideas off of each other. And when I write a sentence, even when I'm writing an original sentence from scratch, I'm not inventing the alphabet, I'm not inventing an idiom, or I'm not building grammar from scratch. I'm building on all of these systems that people before me have built collectively and have passed down through time so that I can now continue building. And so I tend to think of AI, broadly speaking, kind of as continuing that impulse to sort of create these foundational systems on which we can then continue to iterate and ideate and create novel iterations of things. And I always think of, I'm a writer, so I always think about other writers, and T.S. Eliot, who's one of my favorite poets, once talked about how every poet who's writing is writing not just from their own soul, but is actually writing with the blood of every other poet who's ever lived coursing through their veins. And I like to think in an ideal way of AI in that way, that it is the blood and it is the written record and it is the sum total of human creative output here in this amazing infinite library that we now have the ability to tap into. And so that is the ideal version of it.
Yeah.
And then you have the layer on top of that that is exploitative and extractive. And so that's where I think, it's possible for two things to be true. And, to sort of wrestle with now, what are the actual iterations of the interfaces and of the commercial products and of the capitalization of these tools that actually does allow us to benefit from the accumulative knowledge that AI represents, but also to make sure that we're using all of our collective knowledge and resources to do what AI really did sort of promise at the beginning, which is to redistribute knowledge and share power and really kind of dismantle the way that that capital and power really are so centralized.
Yeah,
in
that's
so
the
many
hope.
ways.
That's the ideal. And as someone, and thank you for sharing all that, because these are really important and nuanced discussions to have. As someone who's the CEO of a big tech company, as part of the biggest tech company in the world, what is your take on this and protecting artists in this time?
Yeah. Well, our North Star, we say to, for instance, narrators, if you were to make a replica of your voice is your choice. So you own your voice, and you can determine which titles it can be applied to. In fact, it's the author or the publisher that determines which voice would be applied. It's a deal that's between the author and the narrator. And so it's a little bit of while we're using advanced technology, our business model is pretty much the way it always has been. Like we've a marketplace on Audible where we connect authors with narrators, and we just act as an exchange. And now we're doing that, on a much grander scale because there's more choice with AI. But at the same time, it's really important that those rights are held by the rights holder. Audible has, we started as a company. The founder was an author. We're a company about authors and creators, and so again, we're always at that intersection of art and science, and making sure that we're delivering great content. And in order to do that, you've got to, basically have the trust and work well with creators. And so making the technology available for them to expand their catalog with us is really important.
And I think transparency is so key, and a reminder to everyone,
Yeah.
wherever you are in the spectrum, to read the terms and conditions. Like, read it, it's there.
100%.
It's not easy. You're opting into things, but
Yeah.
you gotta read it. And that's
Yeah.
the challenging part.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I do this. I download something, I just need to do it, use it quickly, and then before I know it, I'm opting into who knows what, and that's been normalized as well. Have you seen, I'm sure you've seen these articles of people with AI creating so many books, right? Like hundreds at once and throwing it up. What is your take on that, and what that creates in terms of a landscape of literature right now, the future of books?
Well, I tend to think that over time, cream rises, right? The good quality content. And, the technology can make every jumble of words a book in a sense, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's commercially, it has commercial upside, or that people will really want to read it or listen to it. In our case, we're applying narration to books that have been written, and so that's our business model at Audible. In terms of the authors writing the books, there's definitely going to be many, many more AI-driven titles, but I do think that in the end, quality will hopefully rise above. But there will probably be titles that will be appealing to customers, and because the book business is a very long tail of interests, and so there may be some that really want to go, customers that want to go deep in a certain genre that's very niche, where there is a whole lot of AI-driven content, and if that's for them, then then that would imply that they're commercially viable, they're interesting. But I think that for most people, quality will still.
That's the hope. I wonder if you're going to see an uptick in books being uploaded to Audible because of how.
Oh, absolutely. Like, we're already seeing that. We're making these voices available to independent authors that could never have afforded.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing a tremendous increase this year, for instance, in the number of titles, and that's the benefit of it. It's like, it's real, it's happening. This is not some science project. This is like, we're actually making audiobooks that would not have otherwise existed, and it's just the beginning.
It's so interesting because this is all happening so fast.
Yeah.
I published I'm someone who makes AI and digital literature, but I also publish physical books. And my first book, my first collection of poetry, came out in 2021, and it was co-written with an AI model that I had trained on all of my lifelong corpus of materials. And that came out, and soon after it came out, I was talking to my publisher about turning it into an audiobook. And I was told that I could do it as an audiobook, but I had to do it all in my own voice, and I couldn't actually use machines to create or bring to life the poems in the books that were actually written by my AI system. And that was just such a strange thing. And now, a couple of years later, here we are having this conversation about using AI in this way. And it's really fascinating to me how quickly these technologies are really shifting how we talk about genres like literature as a whole, or how we talk about publishing, as a category. It's really astonishing to me.
Yeah, so
That is.
Just to let you know, for patent law or trademark law, I don't know, do you trademark things or patent things?
No, but I also think that what I'm doing as an artist, I'm using very specific processes, and it's, I think, very different than sort of using
So it is
tools for
transformative.
content. Very,
Because
very much
you cannot, I don't know if you know this, patent something or trademark it if the result is AI. It needs to be very transformative and come from the human prompt. So you could potentially trademark the prompt, but not the output, depending on how transformative it is. And I think that's really interesting and shifts.
Yeah, and I think on that note too,
Yeah.
it's very interesting to me because the more conversations I have, even as we're becoming more and more AI literate and more of
Yeah.
us are using different AI tools regularly, I think there is still this prevailing idea that using AI tools is a mode of efficiency and optimization, and that that's the core goal of using AI. And I think that's one of the goals in some cases for some tools, but I certainly don't think it's the sole reason. I mean, when I'm using AI tools, I'm using it for lots of reasons, including wanting to sort of be able to take various recordings of my voice or my family's voices and other languages and mix them together the way an artist would mix paints or pigments and create something else that I can use as a narration tool. And I'm doing that like with aesthetic qualities in mind. I'm doing it in a very involved way that's not about making my life easier or making it so I don't have to go into a recording studio. It's because I want to have a voice that reflects my hybridity as an analog and virtual human being moving through the world, in this time of machines. And so I think there's all those considerations as well that go way beyond this idea of pushing a button and having something come out.
What tools do you use? Let's talk about tools as an artist and as a CEO right now. Yeah.
I mean, I use a lot of language models, and I take, language models, voice cloning tools. I use a lot of text to image and text to video models.
Like what? Like 11 Labs is great for voice, by the way.
I've worked with 11 Labs.
Yeah.
I work a lot with, honestly, commercial products like even Neural Reader, just taking very off-the-shelf things and kind of figuring out how to use them in different ways.
Yeah.
But I work a lot with Google and with Gemini. I've been working with OpenAI since GPT-2, and so they're a go-to. Jurassic and Mistral and Claude, and they kind of all are in the suite. I think that's part of this too, is that I don't look at it as one product or needing to kind of pick a lane. It's kind of like walking into Blick and being able to pick, whatever tools I want, and then creating this suite or creating this studio of AI software, AI interfaces and platforms that I can then kind of pick and choose from. And so that's part of the transformative nature of this too, is that by this point, I've been working with AI for about 8 years. And so being able to have built all these different versions, different data sets, different prompt architectures, different methodologies over time, it's now like quite intricate. And it's definitely not as easy as saying I can just copyright this prompt, because that's really like the tiniest piece of the puzzle, I think, for a lot of creatives who are working with these tools. And I think that's increasingly the case in the creative economy at large. My background's in advertising, and I've done a lot of work with creative agencies and art directors and folks who are using very sophisticated workflow, you know? So
I would love to hear, I mean, obviously, I don't know, maybe you do art at home, but, but I think that it's a big talk in the headlines are how this is being implemented in companies and with teams. So anything you want to reveal here or tease?
Well, a big topic is actually getting our teams to improve their overall AI literacy and usage of AI.
Yeah.
And so, at Audible, we've just gone through our second AI showcase where we are highlighting by each department AI innovations and experimentation and just really bringing it to life in like a trade show kind of way. And we did one and it was such a hit, so we just repeated it. And it also involves about 2 weeks of sessions that we have a few outside speakers, but it's mostly a lot of our experts in the company that really show what they're doing to create different agents and different, how they're really reinventing workflows and processes, being AI first, et cetera. So I think that it's imperative on companies today to really move the employee base forward to be participants in this, to improve AI literacy. There's a lot of anxiety, I think, that a lot of professionals have today, a lot of employees have, about being a part of what's happening out there. And it's really just about experimentation and leaning in and doing it at some level. And it's really helpful to have kind of ambassadors that can show you the way. And that really has been, kind of a focus. And I can't tell you how many people at Audible have been using AI to rethink how they are their day-to-day workflow, and it's really, really great to see.
Yeah, and I think that people also know that if you're at a big company, you're not necessarily using the tools all of us are using because there's proprietary information and confidential stuff. Is this something you think about as well?
Sure. Well, of course we have rules around that, like, They can't put documents into more commercially available LLMs, but we have distillations of LLMs that are used, for company-specific purposes, and they have prompts that are kind of tailored to kind of our business models and those things. So, yeah, I mean, then that for sure we do that, but there is. Again, just a ton of experimentation across every department, utilizing these tools that are relatively easy to access now, and it's just incredibly exciting to see.
It's funny because this is called protecting creativity in an AI era, and I actually started with disrupting because I guess we need to be thinking about protecting, but creativity is going to transform and change. So I guess, what do you think about the state of creativity and what's at stake right now?
I mean, I think that's a huge reason why I'm so sort of exhilarated about this moment that we're in. I mean, there's so many risks and there's so many things to consider, and there's many flawed examples of how this is coming to life right now. But I think overall, what I'm really motivated by and energized by is the feeling that we are in this really sort of pivotal seismic moment. I mean, I think a lot about the long trajectory of literature, again, as a student of books and literature. And I've written quite a lot about and made a lot of art about the fact that, we are now in this moment where we are shifting from this moment of, started with the oral tradition many, many millennia ago. We've now been in this period of literacy for many, many hundreds of years, and that kind of is the de facto way that we have to communicate with each other. And now we're really shifting into a new mode of generativity where we have brand new tools for how we communicate. We have new means of taking what's in our imaginations and bringing it out into the world and sharing it with other people in ways that we've never been able to articulate before. We have this brand new articulatory intelligence that is helping us express feelings that we may not even know we have. And I think that's profoundly interesting. And I think it's also, because we're here at an economics forum too, I think that's also really incredibly exciting in the way that the invention of the Gutenberg printing press was exciting. Not only as, it was this multifaceted moment in technology and in history where, we had an invention that revolutionized the distribution of information, that made printing and mechanical reproduction possible. It changed, the structure of power and who gets information and how we wield that information. It changed human consciousness in terms of how we understand ourselves. It changed by bringing about new genres of literature that enabled different voices to come to the fore. It's all up and down. It's like economic, cultural, all of it. And so I think, again, I don't know how I could be an artist or a writer in this day and age and not be utterly fascinated by all the ramifications
I guess it's
of
like
this explosion.
How do you make sure that all of us don't get left behind? We're feeding all our stuff into it, and then what happens? And then what? We're all optimistic now. I mean, listen, I'm a tech optimist, but what do you say to those who are not so optimistic, and how to protect themselves?
Yeah.
Well, again, it's about working with partners that you trust, and it's about experimentation, testing, and learning. Reading your contracts carefully, as you said. And look, you've seen these shifts over time. If you're a technology enthusiast, you've seen shifts from the PC to mobile, conventional web to mobile web, cloud, et cetera. These are major shifts that have happened. And more often than not, they create, new opportunity for those that lean in, for those that participate. And so I think that, again, this is a moment, it's an inflection point, and one that has, just tremendous potential.
Yeah, and I think we saw with social and YouTube, democratization of the pipes. With this, we're seeing democratization of creativity and the content. We see this with Sora, where you can create anything with the prompt. But not just that, it actually edits the video so it's more for social media. My fear is, again, already he's taking the logos away. What will we even know what's real and what's not? And I think as humans, that's very frightening and concerning on so many levels. I want to open it up for questions. Does anyone have a question here? Yes, we have a question. Hi. We're going to come to you, or you can go to the mic.
My My question is, in protecting yourself, you mentioned you trust the people you work with, but AI just takes the information that's out there. So how do you protect yourself once it's out there?
Well, don't you think a lot is already out there?
It
Like,
is.
that's the issue. I mean, the reason why AI knows me so well, besides me using it, is because I'm a public figure. So it is already scanning the internet for a lot of what it sees as Shira, which is the unfortunate also part of the fact that we didn't know what was going to happen with social media, right? And the ownership of our likeness on social too. But
Yeah.
Plagiarism.
yeah,
Right. Well, I mean, there's a couple of things there. I mean, one is I would be careful about some sensitive information and making sure you're not actually using models where things are actively being sucked in. Like, I would opt out of that, and you usually can, or find models where they're being more transparent about that. So there's some levels of information that I would definitely be nervous about. But I think when it comes to, like, your creative product, in all honesty, in my heart of hearts, I don't have any problem with any work that I've ever written and put out there being used in any of these systems, because that's kind of why I created the product in the first place. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I made the poem or the painting, because I wanted it to be out there. And I know that it's going to then be, digested and metabolized in culture in some way if I'm lucky, if I've done a good job creating it. I think this is why to take that a step further, I think why I do think it's so important to be involved and to sort of be an active participant in using the systems and kind of, testing them out and experimenting and providing feedback is because I do think there are potentially better ways to do this where there is more of, a compensatory kind of circulation for everything. One of the reasons I'm working both with AI and with blockchain is precisely to think about how you could use these two technologies together, potentially to kind of bring, texts or bring pieces of art together with blockchain technology to kind of trace those little atoms of creative product that are getting disseminated, out through the system. And again, I think, we're all kind of referring to how do we protect from AI or how do we, resist AI? And I think the biggest thing to remember is that AI is not a monolith and it's not some inevitable thing that exists in this, format. None of these problems that we're talking about are actually inherent to the technology. They're symptoms of the way that we're building them now. And if we don't get involved in this, then that's just going to get worse, in my opinion.
Can I, as a,
yeah, and then
but you want your work out there. How do you get paid? And then, how do you make your money, your royalties, and then the plagiarism thing, the information's out there, but it's so easy now to plagiarize that it's like, you just flip it, it's going to plagiarize it. Anyway, that's,
No, these are good, good questions.
There are definitely AI companies that are less concerned, it appears, about rights, and they have, accumulated a lot of information. But again, pick your partner. For instance, in our case, we pay voice narrators to create models. If you own your model, or you do own your model, and then you commission with an author. So those optimized experiences where you actually commercialize it, you have to work with companies that have a marketplace and a fair way to get paid, which is they're out there. And so that's what I would just say. Pick your partner.
And I think that's where unions like SAG partner with narrative for voice for their actors. So I think more organizations, unions that have groups of people. So if you're in the theater community, maybe there's something to be said about that community aligning with certain organizations that they say to that community, okay, we're giving you the go-ahead that's safe to use this because we figured out a compensation model. I do think also there will probably be some sort of revenue model on Sora at a certain point. I think in the end, what is worrisome even as a digital publisher, and I'm sure you think about search, where if everyone's just using ChatGPT for search, how do you even get people to you? I guess, are you thinking about that for marketing?
Of course, yeah, we use search quite a bit. We want to make sure, I think over time, a lot of these LLMs will create commercial ways to link out, just like the search engines do, to those that are willing to bid for that inventory. So I think that's coming.
Oh yeah.
They're building the audience now, and we'll see where that unfolds. But yeah, I think ultimately there will be a migration towards these capabilities, and I do think there'll ultimately be a marketplace for companies like ours to be in that experience.
And I think as a creator, we talk a lot about owning your audience, not just with AI, but on social media. So it's like you're renting space on all these platforms. How do you make sure you're getting emails, creating a pipeline for that, getting text messages? I think a lot of creators are moving towards even IRL, right? So you're going to see a bit of a trend towards that, which I know you're in theater. Like these are really, it's great for someone like you, but you utilize these as amplification and marketing and emerging tech to innovate. Innovation doesn't necessarily, it leads to, I would say, relevance, but you need to still think about how do you get people in seats. Is it going to steal from that? I think people are going to want that even more in an AI era.
Yeah.
Right? You could follow a big AI play, right, whatever, but how are they going to perform it? Can everyone do that model? We have AI musicians now, right? Is every musician going to watch in a theater an AI musician? Come on. Like, not every musician will be an AI musician. I'm sure there will be.
Yeah.
But
well, I think that's a really good point too. I mean, right now, like one of the things I've been experimenting with, and I'm mentioning this because we're all kind of like local here, but my recent poem I actually published as an art installation at the Museum of Modern Art in New York.
Yeah.
And this is sort of an experiment in like, it's partly art, but it's partly, it's a text. It's a book that I'm publishing using generative tools. But the idea is that I'm trying to rethink like how it lives in the world and how it keeps evolving and how it could sort of continue to reproduce itself, to replicate in different venues, different environments. And it's sort of given me the chance to sort of rethink the idea of maybe, thinking about selling or publishing my poetry in a different way. And I think there's also that just, trying to think outside the box a little bit. And we have these like very go-to structures for what, making a living looks like say in the publishing world, which I know very well because for a long time I was really struggling to sell books and things like that. And I think, again, being able to sort of go outside that and sort of, look at opportunities to really innovate and sort of recreate what this creative product might look like and find new audiences and new ways to get it out into the world. There's lots of possibilities right now.
by the way, it reminds me of TV when they were scared of putting their content on YouTube. Now YouTube is top viewership for TV audiences. So what happened to those people pushed back?
Yeah.
Just saying. So sometimes it is evolving with it, but without necessarily, the idea is predatory behavior and being taken advantage of, which is why a lot of lawsuits are happening. We couldn't have our lawyer here, but I did do some research. And basically, there are media companies and authors and the creatives that are winning. But they need to make sure that, one, it comes with if the AI company has used the content for commercial use, or if it's illegal, like pirated material. So that was interesting, like Anthropic versus a lot of these authors. The authors won, not because Anthropic took their writing, it's because they used pirated books, which is hilarious almost. So I think we're gonna see a lot of these cases that end up setting precedent for how we look at this. And on their side, on the AI platform side, even Meta has won because it's been deemed as transformative. We're gonna see a lot of tension between these two things as we continue. It's important, I think, to fight the good fight, but then also recognize it depends on where you're fighting this and the judge and how they view this. Any other questions? I know we started a little late, but any other questions? Yes. Oh,
I'm a mic runner, if anyone.
oh, okay. I saw another hand. Yes, we have, do you wanna, or the mic will come to you.
Yeah, you mentioned, Shira, when you want to use a new AI tool, you get that like a consent form and you click on it as fast as you can because you need access.
Yeah.
There's no alternative. Either you click it or you don't get access. So I'm just curious if there's like some thinking we should do on the policy front around what are some opt-out options that we could consider?
Yes, so part of the work I'm doing with Congressman Ro Khanna on the economic agenda for the digital workforce, or he called it creator rights, even though it's for digital workforce, or people that are living and working online. The idea is it is very, like, it's almost like consumer rights. The fact that it's not really obvious where we need to opt in. it's very small print. Like it needs to be more clear what we're opting in for, and we need an ability to opt out. The same thing happened recently with streaming. I don't know if you noticed, where your credit card, they can't just keep charging your credit card. I don't know if you experienced this, but there was a new law where supposedly, where it will let you know you need to renew it. We're not going to just automatically put this on your credit card. I think it's similar to that, because it's so easy as consumers just to, use something and forget about it. It's not fair, right? And it means it takes advantage of what we don't know. So I think that will be part of some of the policy as well. Deepfakes will be huge, making sure that and there's already some policies coming up around this, especially in California, for, No Fakes Act as well. So the problem is right now is it's so state by state versus federally, and this is always what creates the issue and I think the confusion.
And that's why I bring it up being in California, because we were able to opt out of sharing our personal data because of state legislation. So I'd love to connect with you on that.
Yeah, definitely. Any other questions? With that, as we wrap up, I guess, where do you see all of this in the next year? Next year, if we had this conversation, what do you think we're going to be talking about? And are you worried about your jobs and your work being taken, like one day saying, I can't do what I'm doing anymore because AI just took it over, as a CEO or as an artist and poet?
Well, I think that it's really important, if you're leading a company, that you set a tone of innovation, experimentation, that you try to bring in as many voices and employees into the experience to get them, using the capabilities, right? Tone at the top really matters, and you got to lean in. You have to. I think being a leader today is a lot about that, and so we need really great employees to help create amazing solutions for customers and authors and publishers. And so, the innovation is not going to stop. It's really just a question of getting our employees super activated and engaged in it. And I'd like to think that if we're successful at that, then I will have done an okay job as a CEO, and I'll be okay. But I also, I spend a lot of my own time, utilizing these capabilities to get better at analyzing documents and trends and things. So it's really about leaning in, and just absolutely self-education and really thinking of new ways that you can use these capabilities to help grow the business.
Definitely. And I just want to give a shout out to you in Audible, because I didn't mention this, but you have contributed to Audible, not you personally, but through your work, almost $2 billion to Newark. As being part of Newark.
That's
so let's
amazing.
give them a round of applause.
Thanks. Yeah, we're so, have a kind of a smile on my face being in Newark. It's great. I'm so thrilled that this conference is here this year. Newark has been our home since '07, and we're a huge part of the revitalization and the acceleration of innovation here in this great city. And it's not just, by the way, about bringing our employees up. We have a program called Future Leaders, where we bring, it's a high school internship program essentially, and we bring in many students every year and orient them around, and it's just from Newark, and they have very meaningful internships, and they're engaged in our business in a paid internship. Many of them, almost all of them, go off to college, and many to really terrific schools. But that's how you also kind of plant the seeds of innovation in a city like this.
Yeah.
And you help, you drive economic revitalization, you use suppliers, you have a footprint here, but you also, really use your resources to help bring some of the younger folks up, because they are the future leaders. And many of them, are employees of ours today from going back years. And so we're really, really proud of that. And so it's great to be here in Newark. Thanks for mentioning that.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thanks.
And Sasha, a little future looking and
Well, I was also just going to say, I think Jensen at NVIDIA said something like, if you are a company and you are getting rid of human employees because of AI, you don't have enough good ideas.
Oh.
And I think that's really true. I mean, for me, in my experience, I feel like, working with AI has really just made me so inspired to take my practice to new levels, and it's given me new ideas for what I want to do, how I want to do it. And I've spent a lot of time, over the past 5 or 6 years, really working very closely with peers and other artists and students and fellow writers, and kind of, just introducing them to some of these tools. And I think whether or not you choose to use them, for your practice or not, or, maybe you're using them for admin and not for creating, but I think there's so many different possibilities. And I've just seen it, really be so useful to so many people, to be like genuinely so valuable in different ways. And I think that's going to become more and more apparent. I think we're at a point now where people are getting past this initial sort of hump of just the novelty factor, and we're getting to really kind of feel out what it means to use the tools and to experiment with different companies and different platforms, and to really kind of get more into the nitty-gritty of it. And I think that's a very important point for us to be getting to, both in terms of our experience, but also in terms of having more nuanced discussions than just the knee-jerk reaction about like yes AI or no AI, which is pointless, I think, as far as like the discourse goes. And so I don't know, I hope in the near future, I think we're getting more to that point of having these more intricate and more hopefully logistically impactful conversations. And in my own practice, that's what I've been working towards, not just, making art, but really kind of thinking, how do I keep talking about what I'm doing with policymakers, with teachers and educators. I've been working with state education programs and thinking about AI literacy on the curricula. How do we formulate workshops? I've spent time on Capitol Hill with Andreessen Horowitz and others, and really kind of thinking through how to translate some of the things that are going on in my studio into, something that will be useful in some other way. So I think, again, now that many of us have had a chance to kind of sit with and experiment and really kind of chew on the good and the bad, I think we're going to get to a point where there's hopefully more meat and more bones to the conversation.
I love that. Well, thank you both for being here. I give it up for Sasha and Bob and all of you for joining us.
Thank you.
Hopefully we left you with some optimism and a lot of food for thought for the work you're doing in the field. Thank you so much for having us today.
Thanks.
And Aspen Institute. And follow all of us on social and listen to my podcast. Appreciate it. Thank you.